we're a family company. We're also always looking at the long term. How do we make sure that the brands are going to be relevant and are going to stay at the top in the future? Because we're not here for quarter profits. We're here for generational heritage and generational wealth.
Hi, I'm Jason Harris, and you're listening to Soul and Science. Fast forward your marketing mind in about 20 minutes. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Otegui, CMO of Proximo Spirits. Lander is an engineer with a passion for marketing, where he spent most of his career effectively merging the power of ideas and science. Lander's received numerous awards for his work, including Cannes Lions, Effies, D&AD, One Show, Clio, and many more. Throughout his career, he's been able to successfully create and grow multiple brands, expand, turn around, and acquire businesses in different categories and markets, with beverage alcohol being his expertise. He was born in Mexico City, and he's very passionate about tequila, and it's one of the fastest growing categories globally, and we're going to talk about that today. So thanks for joining us today. We know how busy you are, Lander, so thanks for making the time. So we're going to talk today about marketing mixology and how you've built tequila brands and many other brands throughout your career. And I always like to start with, what is Lander's origin story? I know you had the engineer sort of path, but how did you get from there into marketing? And then once you were into marketing, how did you know it was like the right fit for you and it matched your skill set?
I never planned to be on marketing as a career, but I always loved marketing in different ways. So I was a big fan of creativity since I was a young child. So I love drawing, I love building things, I love deconstructing things and figure out how they worked. I love to experiment. So at the end of the day, I think creativity has always been a passion for myself and something that I really, really enjoyed. One of the things I remember as a child as well was that I enjoyed actually watching ads. For some people, ads are annoying, but I remember watching ads and thinking about what were the people making the ad thinking about and how they came up with those ideas. So I remember especially when it was the Christmas time, I would sit around the TV and watch the ads for the different toys that were coming out for Christmas. And I would have a pencil and a paper, and I would write based on the ads which toys I wanted. So ads were always something that I remember were very present in my childhood. And I was a little bit confused, to be honest, when I was about to enter university in Mexico, and I went to one of these places where they test your capabilities and they tell you more or less what you're going to be good at, because I had just like a passion for different things, and I wanted to get to the career that was going to be the best thing for my professional career. So I went to this place, and they basically told me that engineering was my top choice based on my capabilities for numbers, but also for solving problems. And I think solving problems is a big part of what we do in marketing, and solving problems for consumers. And I always kept marketing as a second plan for me. I always said I'm going to study engineering, and maybe I'll do a master in the future in marketing, because that's what I enjoy the most. And actually, when I was about to finish my career in Mexico, one of our teachers was actually working for Cuervo in Mexico at the time. And he told me about an intern program that they were doing, like a trainee program. And he said, I like your profile, and I think you should be interviewing for this process. So there I went. I went into this interview process with Cuervo in Mexico as the largest spirits company there. And here I am many years ago in this role. So it wasn't really planned for, but once I got there, I really enjoyed, and I really felt like I was in my wheelhouse. So
I love what you said, though, because marketing and advertising really is deconstructing problems, and it is figuring out how to architect success. So I like that background has served you well. We started working with you guys around like the beginning of the pandemic, actually. And one big focus that we collaborated on was really moving into more of engagement advertising with the audience, and less sort of just putting messages out there. Did you have a gut instinct that was the way to connect with consumers? How did that come about with your team and our team?
Yeah, so I think when I look back at right where I joined the company here in the US, there was a lot of very traditional marketing and traditional advertising that that was the type of advertising and the type of messaging that was probably very successful in like the 80s and the 90s, where you were just putting out a message, and the company that had the most amount of money was the most successful because they were the ones that were able to purchase the ads in the prime spot. So I think that the landscape has been changing significantly for every type of company, where you have now smaller brands that are much smarter and much more flexible and tech savvy, that can really even a tiny brand can have a message right on your phone in a very cheap and a very efficient way. So if we wanted to succeed as a company in the US, we needed to ramp up our 360 approach, and not so being so much focused on linear TV and traditional advertising. And I think Cuervo, if you look at Cuervo's history, Cuervo has always been about engagement and about connections ever since the brand was born over 260 years. We've been pioneers and innovators ever since the creation of the company and the brand. And at that point, I felt like we were falling a little bit behind, and we were also seeing a pretty big competitive landscape that was changing as well. There were many tequila brands coming into the market, and obviously as the biggest brand and the biggest company, you are the target for these smaller brands, because you are the one that they can take the share from. So it was a red flag for us, and we knew that we had to do things differently, and we knew that we needed to engage in a very different way with a new generation of tequila drinkers. So it's been a major shift, and I think we're finding success in talking to consumers in a very different way, talking to young consumers in a very different way. And we're seeing how they are appreciating the brand, and how the brand has continued to grow in a category that's been bombarded by competition and celebrities and just a lot of noise. And Cuervo is still our mothership, and it's still growing. And I think it's a very successful accomplishment to see the brand continue to be the number one after 260 years, which is easy to say, but I don't think there's a lot of companies that can say that.
Do you worry about all that competition, or do you feel like they're sort of going to come and go and you'll be the last man standing?
No, I think if you talk about the tequila category, I think we're excited with what's happening. This is something that we've been dreaming of for many years, to see the explosion of tequila in the US the way it's happening right now, because I think a rising tide brings all the boats afloat, and I think we're finally seeing that consumers are appreciating tequila in a very different way, and are seeing that the craft and the quality of tequila it's very different from what they thought probably 20, 30 years ago. And the way we stay on top, I think it's being a big brand, you have to be everywhere. It's having the right price, it's having the right size or the right formats for consumers to enjoy, being in the on-premise, in the restaurants, in the bars. I mean, there's a lot of trade practices that are very important, promotions, etc. But when you talk about the consumer, it's about being relevant. Engagement has been a big priority for us over the last few years, where we saw consumers getting more interested in the tequila making process, in the history, in who's behind the company, what are they doing in terms of production, sustainability, etc. So that was one of our biggest shifts in understanding consumers are actually interested in knowing what goes inside a bottle, and it's not just about how the bottle looks or how the bottle makes me look. And I think in that case, Cuervo has a lot of things to say. I mean, being the first, being the number one, being the largest, but also being the one that cares the most about the category itself, and being the one that really is trying to educate consumers on tequila.
I love that. There's the Jose Cuervo brand, and then you have different types of tequila that you come up with. So how do you think about different audiences and the different marketing mix of products?
We have products that are like ready to drink or ready to mix products, all the way up to really expensive high-end tequilas, like our 250 Aniversario or Reserva de la Familia, which is the original luxury tequila, the first extrañejo tequila, the one that created the whole luxury tequila category many years ago. So obviously every tequila has its consumer, it has its occasion, it has its own moments. And then you have tequilas that are more like your everyday tequila, like Tradicional or Cuervo Especial, different styles and different price points. But all of our portfolio is high quality tequilas, if you look at it that way. We are producing it at the same distillery where we produced our tequilas over 260 years ago, as I said, the same traditional methods. We are the company that employs the most amount of people in the agave fields. We own the largest agave crop in the whole industry. So when you see people thinking about Cuervo as this big brand, yes, we're big, but we're also big in the right way. We're not doing anything that's different from what we did many years ago. We're trying to keep the traditions. We're trying to keep the history and the practices that got us here. But at the same time, we have been able to innovate and to create different products for different consumers. Right now, as you know, we're launching the Tradicional Cristalino, which is a category that we created a few years ago with one of our other brands, and it's now taking off. In Mexico, that category is already over 30% of the market in tequila. And it's also understanding what consumers are looking for. And that's where we innovate. We pay attention to what consumers, bartenders are thinking about or how they're using our products, and we try to bring solutions to them. Some of the things that we're trying to do now is kind of reestablish what Cuervo means, because for the longest time consumers thought about Cuervo one way, but I think it was a lack of understanding and a lack of really seeing what's behind the curtain and what's behind that bottle. And I think you can see that when people go and visit tequila and when they visit our distillery and they hear about the history and they see the actual thing being produced, it's a life-changing experience for most of the people that visit us. So I think the more we can build on Cuervo as a franchise, and the more we can tell consumers about the importance and the role that Cuervo has played in the category and the quality of the products that we put out from those factories and those distilleries, I think that's when that halo effect touches every single thing that goes under the name Cuervo, because there's a pretty strong history and there's a pretty reputable quality of products that come out of our distilleries. And I just think consumers need to rediscover what Cuervo is all about.
I love that. And you also mentioned earlier sustainability. How do you see sustainability playing a role in the marketing mix and that consumers care about that now?
Funny enough, sustainability has always been part of Cuervo, even before it was cool, and it was another marketing angle. So, as stewards and as creators of the category, we have a big responsibility to make sure that tequila continues for generations and generations. And as the category expands and the needs for more agave to be planted, we are the ones that are most concerned or more involved in how do we make tequila sustainable for the future. So we were the first to start thinking about how do we produce tequila in a much cleaner fashion, and how do we make sure that these production practices are as sustainable as possible with the technology that's available. So, I mean, I can tell you that we have from state of the art water treatment plants in all of our distilleries where the water comes out cleaner than it came in. We use the agave bagaces, the leftover from the cooking process and the let's say the extraction of the juices from the agave. You're left with all the fibers. So we use that in our ovens as we burn it to heat our ovens. For example, we recycle the agave. We use it as compost for the agave fields as well. And most recently, we've been experimenting with agave fibers to create many different things. For many years, we've created clothing or paper and things that are more like artisan and crafts in tequila. But now as you know, we've experimented with how do we use the agave fibers to substitute single-use plastics. And we were very successful creating the agave straws, which we saw incredible demand.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And we're experimenting, and you're going to see a lot of new plastic substitute products coming out from the Cuervo brand in the coming years. I think we, as the stewards of the category, need to be focused on how tequila should be in the next 10, 20, 25 years, and how do we make sure that it stays as sustainable as possible.
But being the number one, making good revenue and good profit margins, do you have to do some convincing to get that investment to figure out how to make things more sustainable? Does that take a lot of convincing, or is there like a shared vision where everyone knows that's the right thing to do? Or how do you think about sort of the internal marketing you have to do?
No, I think for us as a company, as a brand, since it has always been part of our DNA, it's not that it needs so much convincing. I think what we need to convince internally and externally is that this is a long-term play. This is not going to add value today. You're not going to see the payoff today. Investing in sustainability is going to pay off in the years to come. So this is not a one-off. This is not a thing that you're going to invest and see the payback right now, but it's the right thing to do. And I think brands that are doing these type of things in a very strategic but also a very creative way that can communicate it to consumers in a very unique way are the brands that are going to see the long-term benefits ahead of anyone that's not doing it.
I think that's a testament to how you stay number one is you have to always think about short-term gains and profit and growth, but you also have to have one eye towards the long-term future. And if you wait to think about the future, you'll be way behind. Are there any obstacles you've had to overcome to keep the status on top of the category?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think recently there's a lot of those, but I think the way to stay relevant, as we said before, is for us, and also since we're a family company, we're also always looking at the long term and how do we prepare for the future, and how do we build not only capabilities but also how do we make sure that the brands are going to be relevant and are going to stay at the top in the future, because we're not here for quarter profits, we're here for generational heritage and generational wealth. So for us, it's all about focusing on the long term and the challenges that we've seen. Well, I think if you look historically at the brand, the challenges in the past were just about showing the world what tequila is. So as you know, we were the first tequila to be sent out of Mexico, and the brand that introduced the world to tequila. So I think even when you go back to the brand's history, one of the biggest challenges was showing people what tequila is and how do you drink this and why this is a good thing to drink, and how do you mix it, the creation of the margarita, the creation of the paloma. I mean, there's so many things that as a company and as a category we had to figure out to show the world that tequila is something that you want to drink, and it's something that you want to be seen drinking. So I think over the past 100 years, I think it was more about how do we carve our space in the spirits industry, and how do we show the world that tequila is actually a craft, high quality spirit that can be compared with a Scotch or a single malt or a cognac or anything that's out there. It's at the same level of quality or more, but also it's a category that allows you to have much more fun than the other categories. But challenges recently, just to tell some stories, obviously, if you read the papers or if you read the news, supply chain has been a major uh, constraint for most packaged goods companies, and in our case, it's been glass, the one that's been preventing us from growing more and from doing the things that we wanted. So when things like this happen, you have to be creative and you have to figure out how do we, serve the consumer and serve our customers without affecting the brand and not only the profitability but also the long term ambitions for the brand. So that has been one of the biggest challenges for us right now, which is how do we figure out as a portfolio who gets the glass, which brands do we prioritize.
And do you think the family run business, which is very unique for the size of the business, do you think that's helped you and your team focus on the future and the legacy and not worry about quarter to quarter maximizing profit?
Absolutely. I think when you have a company like in our case that's owned by a family that has a vision, not only owned by a family that's part of the board or have shares in the company, but a family that has a vision and that have a, a priority that goes beyond making money, and it's more about how do we make this category or this spirit the next biggest thing globally. That continuity, that focus, and that ambition and that passion is what drives the whole company, which is very different from having a company that has a CEO that maybe can be here for a few years and maybe they go out to the next thing and someone else comes and changes things around. So I think that passion and that continuity has allowed us to continue growing the way we have, and to focus on the future and the bigger picture than the quarterly gains.
You obviously speak so passionately about tequila. Where does that love for tequila come from? How'd you get that passion for tequila?
Well, first and foremost, obviously, I'm from Mexico originally, so I carry tequila in my heart. Although I wasn't really a big drinker of tequila when I started drinking in Mexico. My first brand that I managed actually was vodka. So I wasn't even into tequila until I was like 2 years into the company. And I think when you start understanding the craft and the history, and when you start meeting the people that make it, and you go and shake the hands of the jimadores, and you touch the agave, and you experiment the whole process, I think you automatically fall in love with it. And also, once you work on it, and when you start talking to people, and you see how people are discovering it, it kind of motivates you to tell that story to more and more people. So I think the combination of me being from Mexico, and loving my country the way I love it, and also working in this industry, and understanding the craft and the process, and the history that the tequila has. I mean, it's just natural that I'm really passionate about it. And I think once you try our liquids, that's the best proof of concept. Once you put one of our tequilas in a glass and you taste them, I mean, that's when your eyes are really open, and when you kind of validate that everything that I said was actually true.
Being from Mexico, you also feel like you're giving people a part of your history and your country when they're get into tequila.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that deeper idea. You've obviously risen up within Proximo to the top, and you are running a ton of different brands. What do you love, and what's challenging about where you sit today?
Well, one of the things that I love, obviously, right now is the just how the tequila category has evolved, and how the U.S. consumer and just the global consumer is more open to hearing what it is. In the past, it was a pretty big challenge to get, like, a high end restaurant, or even like a restaurant that wasn't Mexican, to carry a bottle of tequila in their menu. So just things like that. And now you see every single Italian, Japanese, every single hotel, every luxury account that sells any type of spirits are carrying tequila. So that's really like an outstanding accomplishment for the category, and something that really motivates me to do more. And we see how the category is going to be performing in the future, and it just fills us with energy and excitement about what's next. And I think another thing that's both exciting and frightening at the same time right now is just managing the whole coming back from COVID, and managing remote, flexible, and the change of culture, and the clash of cultures between the old guard and the younger employees that we're hiring, and what's the right balance. So that's something that I'm both enjoying, but dreading at the same time. But I think we're shaping up a really interesting culture at Proximo, and I think the future is only bright for us.
Tell us a little bit about the Meta Distillery. When you think about a 260-year-old company, and then you think about the metaverse as, the future, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so obviously everyone was talking about it, and everyone saw that was kind of coming. And I think us as the first distillery and as the first tequila brand, we wanted to be first, and that's always that we've always strived as a brand. And ever since we started seeing that this was actually a thing, we said we need to be the first ones out there, and we need to be the first ones to show up. Not only as a way of showing up, we're not the type of brand that just does stunts for the sake of doing it. We wanted to do that as a way to stay relevant for the coming year. So we're not in just for a blip. The way we're approaching the metaverse is something that can stay for many, many generations as well, if the metaverse becomes that type of thing. So we are thinking about this as a way to maintain that relevance and approach our consumers in a very unique way. We're kind of following their journey and offering different type of experiences and different type of options in the way they can connect with the brand. But this is a story that will hopefully last for as many years as the actual distillery is today.
I love the sort of juxtaposition between the oldest tequila brand, but you also want to be on the bleeding edge and be first to new things. There's all kinds of new things, every year. Some things last, some things don't. Do you use data? Do you use your gut? How do you use the head and the heart to make those decisions of where it's right for Jose Cuervo to show up?
Yeah, so I think in this category in particular, heart to me is the biggest driver, because the spirits category and the tequila category in particular, it's a very emotional category. Yes, there's a lot of truth about the quality of the liquid, but it's about the connections. It's about being there and sharing with friends. So this category is mainly driven by the heart. So that's how we think of things. And of course, there's a lot of validation and a lot of data that we use to make sure that our hunches are right, and that the way we're kind of guiding the brand is actually true. But I think we are very guided by the heart, not only by the passion of our owner, but also by the way this category behaves. We are not a transactional category. We see ourselves more as a lifestyle category, and as something that consumers are really, really passionate about. So the heart has to be at the forefront of what we do, with a ton of data that validates every single move.
Do you believe in doing a lot of testing, or do you believe in doing experimenting to see results? Or do you like to do a lot of testing before you put ideas out into the world?
We are a very entrepreneurial company in that way. So we like to test oftentimes just to see if there's a major risk, but we don't over test things. We're very flexible. We're kind of, we think of ourselves, and I think we act like we're a much more dynamic company than some people think of, given our size. But we do testing mainly for validation and for just measuring any red flags, than over testing, because consumers are not always going to tell you what they want. I mean, there's an old saying, from Henry Ford, that he says, if I would have asked consumers, they would have told me they wanted faster horses.
Right.
So there's a lot of times when testing is an overkill. So we try to be driven by, as I said, by the heart, and then use testing as validation of the concepts, and as a way to fine tune and redirect. And we've failed many times, but I think we've been successful the most of the time.
I'm going to ask you some personal questions now. Did you grow up maybe professionally or personally with any role models that helped kind of guide the person that you are today?
So I think maybe I'm a little bit boring in that way, because I don't have a single role model or figure, but I like to collect the things that I like about different individuals, and make an imaginary role model for myself. But I think the people that I admire the most in terms of like from a business standpoint, or from a creation standpoint, were like the creators from the 1700s and the 1800s. When you talk about the Teslas, or the Gutenbergs, or the people that live in that area, the Da Vinci's of the world, those guys were, I think, the biggest innovators, and the biggest creators, and the biggest risk takers that you could ever see, because they were doing things that were completely uh, out of the ordinary by themselves, and they were seeing things that no one else was seeing. And when I compare those creators to the modern creators, where there's probably more like a team effort, and there's a lot of information and technology around, when back in the day it was just, I have this crazy idea, I don't know how I'm going to get there, with Thomas Alva Edison, and figuring out how to create a light bulb. And I think those, ever since I was a child, I was always impressed and admired by the fact that these people were creating these things, in a basement with the garbage they could find in their lab. So I think those people, to me, were like, I want to be one of those creators or innovators. I want to be someone that creates something that can stay for generations, and something that people can find useful.
Do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you always repeat, or you go back to when things are good or when you have an issue? Do you have anything like that in your arsenal?
It's less so a mantra, but I think it's more connected to what we talked about before, like the soul and science and the heart. I think every time I have a hunch, or I think like this is the right thing for me to do, I think it's like, follow your gut, follow your heart. That's gonna be the thing that matters at the end. And I think when you do that, and even when people around you might think either you're crazy, or that's not gonna work, or that's not the way we should solve this problem. I think when you really follow your heart, and you find a way to convince the people around you, I think that's where you find the most success. So to me, it's more than a mantra. It's a way of living. Like, if you have this feeling that when as a marketer and as a creator, you also probably feel that every day you have a great idea. This is the right thing. Let's figure out a way to get it done, and let's follow our gut and our instinct, and let's get people around it to believe in the same thing.
Yeah, follow your gut, I think, is powerful as the mantra. And my last question, what's your favorite drink? If you had one drink, your last drink on earth, what would it be?
Tequila on the rocks, a good high quality tequila on the rocks.
What tequila?
Reserva de la Familia, José Cuervo, Reserva de la Familia Reposado. It's one of my favorite tequilas now. If you haven't tried it, you should get a bottle.
Amazing. Thanks for your wisdom, and it's been really insightful, and we really appreciate the time on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thanks for having me here.
Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, Tyler Nielsen, Emma Swanson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.